October 2023, matchday 27 of Brazil's Serie A. On top, we have Botafogo, comfortably leading the league with 9 points and even 14 points over Palmeiras, sitting in 5th spot. With 11 games to go, this has to be the title, right? Right? It's completely wild. Hard to believe how Botafogo actually managed to lose this 14-point lead and the title to Palmeiras. It might sound a little bit too random to be true that in all of that, you hear right, Cristiano Ronaldo had his part. So let's take a deep dive into one of the biggest bottle jobs in football history. Or as Brazilians call it, a pipocada, which literally translates to popcornage. So grab your portion, make it comfortable, because what's up to come, at least for Botafogo fans, is nothing short of a horror movie. Welcome to Valentin's Football Corner. But let's start at the very beginning. For all those who might not know who Botafogo is, they're one of the 4 big clubs in Rio de Janeiro, named after the neighborhood they come from, Botafogo. They're a traditional club with a history going all the way back to 1894, and they've had some seriously glorious times and absolute legends playing for them, like Nilton Santos in the past. But those days are long gone. In the 21st century, Botafogo were at best a midfield club, and relegated even as early as 2020. But they made an immediate comeback and, most importantly, they found an investor. This man, John Textor from the United States. You might know him from France or England, where he holds shares in Olympique Lyon and Crystal Palace. And now he's also like the quasi-only owner of Botafogo, and as such, he appointed a new manager in 2022, the Portuguese Luís Castro. And this is where we jump right into a horror movie. And just like any other horror movie, it actually started off well, as if nothing was wrong. On the contrary, Botafogo's 2023 campaign started like an absolute dream. 12 games, 10 wins. A start so dominatingly powerful the Brasileirão had rarely seen. And it often sounded like, Go! Meu Deus. Meu Deus. Eu tenho que gritar melhor. Ich hab wie ein Wolf geklungen, der gerade abkratzt. Digga, unnormal. Go! Do! Botafogo! And who had scored those goals most often? Chiquinho Suarez! Chiquinho Suarez was on fire, scoring goal after goal after goal. But then came one fateful day that coach Luís Castro received a phone call, allegedly from a man so famous they built him this beautiful statue in his hometown, his landsman Cristiano Ronaldo himself.
Olha, tu queres treinar meu clubinho de deserto porque eu sou o maior jogador de futebol do mundo? Sim!
And Luís Castro also said "Sí" and quit Botafogo immediately. But that didn't mean that chaos broke out. We are still far away from that. The next 3 games under interim coach Claudio Caçapa were easy wins. And when new coach Bruno Lage took over, the unbeaten run continued. And halfway through the season, having played each opponent once, Botafogo stood on top of the table, having lost only 2 games out of those 19 they had played. And Chiquinho Suarez was leading the top goal scorers list easily with 13 goals. What was even more record-breaking was Botafogo's lead. They were 13 points ahead of second place. And I can tell you that was coincidentally exactly the time I was in Rio de Janeiro for the first time, and nobody doubted that Botafogo would win the title. It was wild. Neither me. I was there, I saw the table, I was like, okay, the league is decided. And funnily enough, the mother of my girlfriend is a Botafogo supporter, and so I was like, most likely I'm gonna become a Botafogo supporter. I even invited her once to go to a Botafogo match, and I was like, dude, I'm becoming a supporter of a team that's gonna win a title that year. But she didn't want to go because she was like, dude, the Nilton Santos Stadium, it's dangerous there, I don't want to go, and be careful, don't go there alone, or even with me. But in the end, plot twist, I actually became a supporter of a team that won a massive title that year, but that's stuff for another video. Stay tuned, subscribe to be on board when it comes out. At matchday 21, Botafogo's unbeaten run had extended to an incredible 12 games without a loss. And it was under those circumstances that they faced Flamengo, city rival, one of the biggest clubs in Brazil, and at that time sitting at 4th in the table. A real banger, a top match. And Botafogo lost 2-1. It was their first home defeat of the season, the first time they had lost in 3 months. But nobody panicked at that point. Why should they? It was in fact a big opponent, a big game. One of those games you might be able to afford to lose, because you can't win everything. And most importantly, Botafogo were still leading the table comfortably. But they lost again. And again. 3 times in a row. The Pipocada, the popcornage, had begun. The next match day, Botafogo had a home game against Goiás from the city of Goiânia, a rather small club oscillating between the 1st and 2nd division in recent years. They would go on to be relegated at the end of the season. The result was once again disappointing. 1-1, draw at home against a team that you should definitely beat if you want to stay top of the table. So the club took measures and sacked coach Bruno Lage, making place for the 4th coach that Botafogo would have this season. And interestingly enough, in the beginning, this move seemed to work. The first 2 games under Lucio Flavio were wins and created the situation that we've seen in the intro. Botafogo on top of the table with a 9-point lead and even 14 points over Palmeiras, who would later become champions. At that point, all could have gone back to normal, back to good for Botafogo. But little did anyone know at that point that out of the remaining 11 games that were to come, Botafogo would win exactly 0. So for that, let's grab our popcorn again and make it comfortable, because what's up to come is, I think, most literally the craziest game of football that I've ever seen in my life. And I'm gonna take a dive a little bit deeper into that, because that's like the wildest thing I've ever seen in fucking football. The downfall. Let's go. Let's have some downfall for breakfast. I'm not lying when I say that. Stay tuned. It's match day 31 and Botafogo play Palmeiras. It's like the early final of the season. Everyone knows if Botafogo wins this, they would go again way on top of the table and would almost certainly win the title. But if they lose, it can get very uncomfortable again. It was kind of a reality check if Botafogo had overcome the crisis or not. And the answer in the beginning was absolutely yes. It was probably the 45 best minutes of football they had played the entire season. They scored goal and goal. And
Pé canhoto bateu fraco, rebote, é gol. No rebote, Júnior Santos, é gol. Gol! Gol! Gol do Botafogo!
3-0 at halftime. An absolute demonstration of power against their rival for the title, and the Estádio Nilton Santos in absolute ecstasy. Second half, enter this guy. You probably know him by now. He's one of the most valuable football players in the world right now, apparently born in the Stone Age. His name is Endrick, and he played for Palmeiras in 2023. In the 49th minute of this game, Endrick scores against Botafogo, 3-1. So far, so insignificant, because the game just went on normally until the 80th minute with nothing happening. And Botafogo were even awarded a penalty to decide it all. Let's pause here for a minute, because it's the decisive moment of the entire season. Stepping up, Chiquinho Suarez. He had barely scored in the last games, was temporarily out of form due to a knee injury. He now had the opportunity to make it all forgotten and to seal this decisive game. The clock shows the 83rd minute. The season could be decided exactly now, and I would never have to make this video. Short notice, I owe this dramaturgical move to the guys from Esporte Conta, Brazilian YouTube channel, who've made a fabulous video about the Botafogo campaign of 2023 in Portuguese. Go check them out, links in the description. But as you might well have deduced, things didn't go that way. And literally 1 minute later, only one turnover from the penalty, Endrick struck again.
Rafael Veiga, pé esquerdo, na curva, a bola tá na área, tá viva, sobrou pro Endrick, driblou, a bola vem, gol do Palmeiras. Endrick aos 38.
In the 89th minute, the unthinkable started to form a reality and the Pipocada unfolded. And it was in exactly this moment that Botafogo crumbled, that my camera just decided to do the same thing and stop recording. I lost it all. I lost about the next 4-5 minutes of footage in this video, so I have to do it all again. I even redid the popcorn to film it all a second time. So let's go back to the story where we left it and see Palmeiras score the equalizer.
A bola para Endrick, cruzamento fechado, a cabeçada no meio, gol do Palmeiras.
Olha o desespero dos caras.
Flaco Lopes. Tietchan vai reclamar.
And it was at this moment that Botafogo broke apart. And it came how it had to. The game wasn't finished yet, and it went on until the 99th minute, when with the very last kick of the game, Palmeiras scored the winner.
Veiga na curva, na segunda trave, só tem jogador do Palmeiras, gol do Palmeiras.
Ih, rapaz.
Não tinha impedimento, o Palmeiras vira o jogo. Gol de Murilo.
Deu ruim.
3-4. I mean, let that sink in. How's that possible? This game was literally easier to win than to lose if you don't lose on purpose and start scoring own goals. Some have seriously considered that some evil spirits might have been at play. And behold, it gets worse. Let's jump right into 33rd matchday. Botafogo were playing Grêmio at home, a team from southern Brazilian city of Porto Alegre. And this game also started off very well, with Botafogo leading 3-1 at halftime. But while Grêmio didn't have Endrick, they had another absolute giant of the game in their squad that year. And apart from sometimes eating Italian shoulder, he apparently took immense pleasure in eating Botafogo's title hopes that evening. He scored 3 times. In 19 minutes. Like, it literally took me longer to make this popcorn than it took Botafogo to popcorn the lead. Needless to say that Botafogo lost this game 3-4 once again, and had their lead in the table shrink to 1 single point. And also this lead was quickly gone, but not in any fashion. They lost it in one of the most painful ways imaginable in football. Enter stoppage time. Matchday 34 now. Botafogo were playing away at Bragantino. Yes, this Red Bull club from Brazil you might have heard about, because Red Bull apparently doesn't already own enough clubs in Europe. And to be honest, Botafogo played an okay game. They were 2-1 in the lead up until the very end. But in the 96th minute, this happened.
Mais aberto o Sorriso, o Hugo não chegou, o Sorriso dominou, Hugo vai chegar agora, cruzamento do Sorriso, cabeçada, gol do Bragantino.
And it was this goal that cost Botafogo the lead. I mean, it's always painful when your team concedes a goal in stoppage time, also if it does nothing significant to the table. But this was really the worst imaginable moment. And it was from this point on that people started to look at the Botafogo downfall with kind of a sense of even helplessness. Botafogo fans, neutrals, but also even their rivals. I've seen many comments on social media from, for example, Palmeiras fans, who were the profiteers of that misery, stating their compassion with Botafogo fans and that they kind of felt sad about what was happening. And the wild thing is, the curse of stoppage time wasn't limited to one game. Literally the next game against relegation battling Santos, it happened again. This was, by the way, the first game of Botafogo's now 5th coach of the season, Thiago Nunes, and under him, Botafogo completely dominated Santos, going 1-0 into the lead and having multiple chances to make it 2 or even 3-0 had they scored a 2-0. But in the 90th minute, it came how it had to, and this happened.
Chega nele, lá vem Soteldo, ameaçou, foi no fundo, jogou na área, cadê a zaga? Cadê a zaga? Gol do Santos. Messias cabeceia e coloca no canto esquerdo do PR. Gol de empate aos 44,5, Gabiru.
And I'm not even gonna tell you more about this game, because what came in the next game is quite literally, I think, the most absurd thing that I've ever seen in football. Something I've never seen before, and quite bizarre if you look at it. But let's take a look. Botafogo traveled to second last, already relegated Curitiba, who also had to play in front of closed doors. Behind closed doors. Behind closed doors, so Botafogo literally faced them in an empty stadium. And Botafogo were still only 1 point behind Palmeiras, so a gap that was quite easily closable. They were still alive in the title race. And finally playing an opponent they could really beat. They should beat if they want to stay alive in the title race. And let's jump right into stoppage time, because it was not a good game, 0-0 right until the end. And the stoppage time was signaled by the ref to be 5 minutes. Remember that, it's going to be important later on. And in the very 5th minute, like the very last minute of the stoppage time, Botafogo were awarded a penalty. Stepping up, again, Chiquinho Suarez. And if I show you this picture now, you're gonna be like, surely he didn't score again. But watch what happens.
Chiquinho! 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 Soares! De pênalti aos 52.
And with Chiquinho Suarez having scored his penalty, we can jump right back into the old footage, because from then on my camera started recording again. Yay! 1-0, 97th minute. And the stoppage time, we remember, was shown to be 5 minutes. So the ref should blow the final whistle. Game's over. Isn't it? Isn't it?
Tem que acabar, e antes do jogo a gente brincava aqui. Pro Botafogo não tomar um gol no acréscimo e perder a vitória, tem que fazer o gol na última bola. Era uma brincadeira, uma piada, algo que a gente brincava, mas tem que ser dessa forma. Para voltar a vencer no campeonato a 2 rodadas do fim. 53,5. O árbitro já tá de olho no cronômetro. É apitar e acabar o jogo. Acaba o jogo. 53,5. O Curitiba não tem por que também querer atacar. Vem bola pro Curitiba. Vai jogar na área, Matheus. A bola tá no alto. Tira! Adrielson. A bola tá no alto. Vai pra dividida. Aperta, 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 aperta. Não pode deixar. Cruzamento que vem. Tira essa bola. Tira essa bola. Hugo fecha. 54. O passe atrás. Sem falta. Cruzamento que vem. Moreno. Alguém. Alguém. Pelo amor de Deus. Não é possível. Gol do Curitiba.
Gol do Curitiba, a phrase that understandably became instantly viral and a meme throughout all of Brazil. There are things that only happen to Botafogo, they say. And this clip perfectly showed what those things were that only happened to Botafogo. They were now 3 points behind Palmeiras, with the worst goal difference, and considering Palmeiras' form, it was more than unlikely that they'd give this lead away again. So all that was left for Botafogo was really trying to rank as high in the table as possible in the end. And here comes another twist in this already incredibly sad story, because Botafogo still had the chance to directly qualify for the Copa Libertadores for the first time in years. And for that, they had to finish top 4. Else they'd have to go through the Libertadores' qualification rounds first next season. And they really also managed to bottle that. A goalless draw against Cruzeiro in front of an almost empty Estádio Newton Santos, and the defeat away at Porto Alegre's other big club, Internacional. So this was the table in the end. Botafogo finishing 5th, 6 points behind Palmeiras, and even 2 points behind direct qualification for the Copa Libertadores. Let's take a moment to let that sink in, to try to grasp how absurd and how devastating and unlikely this Pipocada really was. Let's take a look at the points Botafogo lost late in the game. Had Botafogo not conceded all those goals after the 89th minute, they would have had an incredible 9 points more in the end of the season than they really had. They would have won the league comfortably with 5 points over Grêmio and 6 points in front of Palmeiras. And even with some of those late goals conceded, if we only look at the 2 games against Palmeiras and Grêmio, that they lost 3-4 after leading 3-0 or 3-1 respectively, had they won those 2 games against them, they would have still finished first in the league, 3 points in front of Palmeiras and 5 in front of Grêmio. We're often talking about the football god and on whose side he was, but whom we almost never hear anything about, but whom we almost never hear anything about is the football devil. If there was a moment in football history that he could have had his hands in play, it was almost certainly 2023 with Botafogo. So to finish, do you think that something like a football devil could really exist? And did he have his hands at play here? Write it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to be on board this journey to discover the wildest stories of football in South America like this one. See you then!